about insects since I am an entomologist, and there's also because there's so many of them, and so many that live in different habitats, that live have different life histories, and so we will go through that today a little bit. So I'm going to make the point that there's lots of insects. Probably about 50% of all organisms on Earth are insects. Far fewer than vertebrates, even fewer than there are plants, and also fewer than there are other invertebrates. Insects seem to rule. So what are they doing that's so successful? And then we can learn from that. Now we are most familiar with insects, or you probably are most familiar with insects, because insects are pests, are considered pests. They eat our food, they live in our houses where we don't want them, they may eat our skin, which kind of creeps people out, of course. Probably they can cause dangerous stings that are dangerous to some people. And most importantly, they can be very good vectors for horrible diseases that many people, millions of people, suffer in the world. So that's one subset of insects, and that gives all insects probably a bad name. Now, insects, however, are a fundamental part of our ecosystem. Without insects, we would be in big trouble. Some basic points here. Many insects are pollinators of plants. So without these pollinators, we would have far fewer, we'd have less food, like nuts or strawberries, all those kinds of eggplant, zucchini, all rely on pollinators, many of which are insects. They are very important for decomposition of organic materials. Without insects, we'd be living in waste. So they facilitate recycling of carbon, nitrogen, and so on. They also help control populations of other harmful invertebrates. For instance, this picture, this is one of the systems that I work on. This is a big caterpillar, one of these big caterpillars that you can see tomato plants. And it is getting parasitized by a tiny little wasp. The little wasp will lay her eggs inside this caterpillar. These little wasps will eat the inside of the caterpillar. It's all very gross and alien-like, but the wasps themselves are not harmless, but they do kill the caterpillar, which is eating our crop. And this is actually a very successful lifestyle. There are many different species of parasites that parasitize many different species of insects. So that's an example of controlling populations. There's also lots of predators, insects that eat other insects. They also directly produce certain foods, most importantly probably honey. Honey is used in many cultures as a natural sweetener. They manufacture other useful products, such as shellac. But something that we may not consider very often is, can insects be inspiration for us for coming up with novel designs? I'm going to skip this, and then maybe we can talk about this more in a relaxed atmosphere at the Planetarium on Thursday. What helps us now in using insect as inspiration, because in the past we were kind of constrained because we're talking about a difference of scale. We're much bigger than most insects, but now engineers can use micro-electromechanical systems called MEMS, which is a technology that's very small, so the components that are being used can be 1 to 200 microns in size. So then you get devices that are less than 1 millimeter. And now even there's nanotechnology where they actually study matter on an atomic or molecular scale. So the devices are even smaller, they're in the 100 nanometer scale. So here we finally are coming up with devices that are kind of on the same scale as insects are using. So, so we're now finally able to do that. Now, engineers and biologists can do this using two approaches. Maybe there's a discovery in the biological sciences that is really inspiring, and that kind of sets off the light bulb on somebody, an engineer, that then can be used to help with a challenge in the human world. But you can also do it the opposite way. Maybe there's a challenge that we have come across that we can then look back at the natural world, look at insects, for instance, and see how they solve this challenge and learn from them. Now, either approach is fine. The way I have structured the talk, though, is we will look at first discuss some of the challenges encountered by humans, and then look at how insects solve these challenges. So first, the challenge, the inspiration, and then we'll talk about the application. I'll talk about the application. Some of the topics, I may not get through all of this, and maybe we'll add more in the future. We're going to talk about materials, energy efficiency, water collection, sensing is a big one, traffic, maybe replacing biofuels